Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Iowa SourceLink, Iowa Department of Revenue tax webinar of the year. I'm letting everyone's Zooms load up here for a moment, and then we will get started with today's session. Glad to have everyone here joining us today. My name is Patrick Linsman. I'm the director of the UNI John Papa John Entrepreneurial Center here at the University of Northern Iowa, where we work with businesses, students all across the state on entrepreneurship. And one of our main programs is Iowa SourceLink, the platform where we provide small business information to business owners all across the state. So we're glad to have you here today. Before we get started, as everyone's still loading, we got a couple housekeeping things for everyone to keep in mind. First, the slides are available for you to download and follow along. Haley, who is helping out here today, is going to be posting those in the chat. So be sure to click that link. You can get the PDF version of the slides to follow along with. This session is being recorded and will be available on Iowa SourceLink in about a couple of 3 days. And so we'll be able to share that with you if you have to step away or not able to watch the whole thing today. If there will be a recording that you'll be able to both rewatch and or share. And question and answers are going to be driven through the Q&A box in the Zoom webinar feature. You can go ahead and submit questions there. Those will pop up for all of the panelists, and we'll hopefully answer those as time allows, and we'll try to keep them focused on the topic of today's presentation. Speaking of today's presentation, we've got third-party access and authorization. So we're going to be looking at ways that you can work with GovConnect Iowa to share that access and make sure you're doing all the things we need to do to make it work smoothly. Presenting for us today, we've got Jerica Pellington. She's going to be the master of all things, sharing the slides and giving all the content. Then we've got Tara West, who will be helping out with questions in the background. We're glad everyone could be here with us today. With that, Jerica, I'll toss it to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Patrick. So as he said, thank you for joining us today. My name is Jerica. I work on the GovConnect Iowa team at the Department of Revenue. And today we'll be covering the access types that are available in GovConnect Iowa and also an overview of what online access looks like, and then going into detail on third-party authorization. Like he said in the chat, you will see Tara. We will likely have time, at the end of each segment for a short Q&A session, and then likely at the end. Just know that if we don't answer your questions in the chat or through those Q&A sessions, just know that we do receive those questions and then we review them, and we either make social media posts about them, or we update our website or help resources as we have the answers. So the first thing we always have to do, if you've ever been to one of our webinars, we have to give you this disclaimer. So just note that this presentation is for general educational purposes only, and it should not be construed in any way as legal advice. The department could take a contrary position for this in the future, so just be aware of that. What I say here today is not binding on the department unless you wish to obtain a declaratory order. And then just keep in mind that any data that I use as an example today is fictional and does not include actual taxpayer information. I do have a few housekeeping items that I also want to share before we get started. So I wanted to start by sharing the ways that you can stay connected with the Department of Revenue. So over the past few years, we have been working really hard on improving what we call the customer experience, which is ultimately your experience. So we've been focusing on improving social media communications, having interactive webinars like this one, and also using GovDelivery as a way to notify you of legislative updates, if there are changes that you need to be aware of, and basically improving how we interact, how we learn, and then how we engage with you. I did want to share that our most popular platform for updates and really for users from like businesses, government agencies, and tax professionals is LinkedIn. So if you don't follow us on LinkedIn, I'd say go give us a follow and you'll be able to see more information. I did want to share the upcoming webinars that we have. So like Patrick had said, this is our first one of the year, but you'll see that we do have them monthly through the end of the year. So we do have a range of topics that are being covered, some that dive into specific areas, others that will help you stay up to date with the latest legislative changes, and then others. You can review the full calendar at the link at the bottom, which is tax.iowa.gov/webinars. We do update this regularly. So if we we happen to hear feedback from you saying, hey, I want to learn more about this, you may see that more webinars are added over time. I did want to announce that we do have a new website that is coming July 9th, 2024. So we will be moving our website as part of the State of Iowa Digital Transformation Project. Our website will be going from tax.iowa.gov to revenue.iowa.gov. This will allow us to integrate the agencies that were combined with the governor's alignment bill. So this includes tax from the Iowa Department of Revenue and then also alcohol and lottery. So you will be able to find alcohol information here as well. And then they do have the lottery site that will still be available, but also some of that information will be located here as well. Really, our goal with this transformation is that we're looking to do three things. One is that we want to make it user-friendly. We want it to, have a design that makes sense for you. We want the information to be accessible to you. And then we also want to standardize the websites across state government so you know that you're in the right place. A fun fact that I wanted to share is that our site for the Department of Revenue receives over 32 million visitors per year. So if you're visiting, know that you're not alone. There are people out there that are looking for information as well. So enough housekeeping. That's all that I have there. For the agenda today, like I said, we'll be covering GovConnect Iowa Access, including getting started, and then we'll focus on third-party authorization. I am going to take a pause at the end of the GovConnect Iowa Access portion just to see if there are any questions about that, and then we'll move on with third-party authorization. So I want to get started by framing the differences between access and authorization. That's going to be really important and will help you understand why we're talking about this today. So they are fairly similar, but they have different meanings. So when we talk about access, we're talking about online access. So that means that you're using GovConnect Iowa, you're connected to a tax account there, and that you're using that self-service portal. So like I said, this is where you're connected to tax accounts or customers, and you're basically working only through the GovConnect Iowa portal. So for business permit holders, this may be where you're filing returns. For other taxpayers, including those permit holders, this is where you're making payments. Maybe you're viewing your payment history, you're viewing letters. I will say that having online access does not give us, the Department of Revenue, the authority to share confidential tax information automatically. So this is where that term authorization comes in. In order for us to share or discuss confidential tax information, we have to make sure that you're authorized before we tell you that information. So, I think of it this way. If you go into a bank and you ask for $10,000 cash, you would expect that the teller or the banker or whoever you're talking to would ask for your ID, right? They wouldn't just give your money away to someone else. That's what we'd hope, right? 10,000 is a lot. Well, we work the same way. We have to verify that you're authorized to receive that information before we can share it. So if we ask for that third-party authorization, that's the intent behind it, is that we don't inadvertently release that information. Some things to know about our authorization forms, which I'll go into more detail later, is that they do require a paper form and signature. They can be uploaded through GovConnect Iowa. And then just remember that even if you have third-party authorization, that doesn't immediately create the GovConnect Iowa access for you. So let's talk about online access first, which is through that e-services portal that we call GovConnect Iowa. So for getting started for businesses or third parties, when you're getting started on GovConnect Iowa, the first thing that I tell people is to see if anyone at your organization already has a GovConnect Iowa logon that's connected to the customer or account that you're looking for. The reason why I say that is that if they do already have one, they can create your GovConnect Iowa profile for you and they can give you immediate access. So what that would look like, and again, we'll go into this in a little bit more detail, is that current user would log into their GovConnect Iowa account, and they're looking for this link that says manage other users with access to this customer. Now, say that you go on the flip side and say that no one at your organization is on GovConnect Iowa yet, you'll need to start from the beginning, and that's A-okay. That's why we're here today. We'll walk through what you need to do step by step. So let's go to step 2. So for new GovConnect Iowa users, where you're going to start is at our GovConnect Iowa homepage. So you can see that link down at the bottom. It's govconnect.iowa.gov. And where you're going to start is through that link that's highlighted in the red box that says create a logon. So the first step in creating a GovConnect Iowa account is to view what's available and what's needed to request access to tax accounts. So this will help you identify what information you may need to have before you get to that step in the process. The second step is to enter your profile information. So this is where you will enter your email, username, password, phone number, and choose your secret questions. One thing that I do tell people about those secret questions is just make sure that you choose something that's easy enough for you to remember, but hard enough that others can't guess it. Once you do that, it's going to take you to a next step that's asking if you're a bulk filer. I tell everyone if you're a bulk filer, I think you will know that you're a bulk filer. It's a very specific term and it does require pre-registration. So you will know if you are one. The most common answer here, though, is no. So then what happens next after you select no, you're going to see a questionnaire. And this is really to make sure that we're getting you to the right place where you need to be. So if you select yes to any of the first questions on this screen, you're almost done. You can move forward, you can click next, and you can create your logon. However, if you select no to those first three questions, then the system's still wondering, what else do they have to do? And that's when you're going to get that fourth question that asks if you need to request access. So you would really select yes to that option if you know that you need to file like a sales and use tax return, if you want to view letters online, view payment history, if you want to maybe do something else that we offer on GovConnect Iowa, that's when you would request access to that. You can also select no to request access and continue creating your logon, and then you can request access later. The next screen that we have will get you started on requesting access. So you'll be prompted to choose from three options. So let's dive into what those three options mean. So the first one that we have is individual income access. So this is intended for individuals that need access to their tax information. The second option is business access. And so this is intended for people that are representing a business, whether it's the business owner or an employee. And you'll see that they do have two options that are available, either an administrator or someone that will receive what's called full access. When we think about full access, that means, you have unlimited authority there. You are the top of the food chain and you have access to everything. I will say that I call those like the keys to the kingdom. If you are not like the business owner, the CEO, the president, I do say choose administrator just to be safe. That does allow for, if someone does come in as full access to come in and be able to manage your accounts later on if you were to ever leave the organization. The last option that you can see is called other party access. This is designated for third parties such as tax professionals, family members, or other third parties. So it's basically, are you acting on behalf of someone else? After you've chosen your type and you've entered in any of the required fields, you will be asked to verify information about the count that you want access to. So here is where you would get a drop-down menu, and this is where you're going to select the account type from that drop-down menu. I did include a fun fact on this screen is that the majority of GovConnect Iowa users are connected to either a sales and use account, withholding, or individual income. So you have a lot of different options that are available to you. After you've selected the account type that you need access to, you will have to verify two pieces of information. Inside the Department of Revenue, we like to call these shared secrets. And what these really are is these are secrets that only you as the taxpayer or the tax professional would know and the Department of Revenue. So what happens is once you enter these fields or you enter in this information, it's going to do a check in our system to see if what you entered matches our records. So if it doesn't match our records, then you'll see a message that tells you to, verify the information and to try again. However, if it does match, then you're going to be able to move on to the next step. And in some cases, like for third parties, this is the next step that you would see. So you'd be able to verify if you want access to any other account type. We do know that there are some third parties that only file sales and use returns. They don't have a need to, see any other account type that could be connected to it. So in that case, you could either select withholding as you see on the screen, you could select sales and use. It's really up to you and the taxpayer who grants you this. If you're unsure of the specific account type, you do have the ability to check all of the boxes. That's an option that you have. You will notice that the account that you chose on that previous screen does carry forward, so you won't have to reselect that. And then what's next? What happens after you've completed that access request form? You'll notice that a few things will happen. So one, when you log into GovConnect Iowa, you'll see that there is a new message in your Action Center. And what this will tell you is where we're at in the process. So did we automatically grant you access? Are we going to send you a letter? Do we need to do something else? You will receive a notification once we've moved forward with our review, and that usually takes 1 to 2 business days. If you're requesting access to an account, here's what you can expect. And this is, again, what's next. What happens if an access code letter is mailed? That will be mailed likely the next business day. And then a letter with that code is mailed to the account holder's primary mailing address. Once you receive that code, you'll need to either provide it to the person that requested it, or if it was you, you log into your GovConnect Iowa account and you enter that code. I will say that this is the third year we've been using this process, and we have found that a majority of the codes are received within anywhere from 3 to 5 business days. However, it can take up to 10 days. What we tell people is that once we mail the letter, we do rely on the United States Postal Service to deliver it. So it's, part of that partnership is we know that we mailed it, but we're waiting on that second piece. Some other things about the codes to know is that the codes can only be used by the person that requested it, and that codes expire after 90 days. We did include an expiration date on that letter below the access code, and so that way you know when the final date is to use that code. A question that we receive commonly here is, hey, I didn't get an access code. What if I didn't receive it? The first step that we would tell you is to verify if someone in your organization received it. Sometimes these single envelopes can end up in a pile on a desk, and we found that in most cases it can be located, but it's not where you may have expected it. Our letters do look like junk mail sometimes with these access code letters, so it may be one that it maybe got sent to the bottom of that pile. So it's just important to double check. And then if you checked and you researched and you're like, I really didn't get it, that's okay. What you would do next is I would recommend that you contact our taxpayer services team, because you really want to verify two things. One, you want to verify that the address is correct on the account. And two, did something stop the letter from going out? There are some circumstances where that can happen. So in those cases, I would say contacting a representative at the Department of Revenue is the best course of action. So another option that you have after you've requested access, you've gained access to those accounts, you have the ability to add online access for others. So this is primarily used by business owners and individuals. But once you're connected to the account, like I said, you can use this link that's called, it's in a panel called GovConnect Iowa Access. It's called Manage Other Users with Access to this Customer. When you click that link, it's going to take you to a new screen. And once you click that, you're going to see that there's a table here that says logons with access, or you're going to see a link that says add a new logon. So let's go ahead and say that we click that link. From there, what you can see is that this is going to create a new GovConnect Iowa profile for someone else. So you really have two options here. One is that you need to select the access type. So you can either choose business access, which was at the beginning, or you can choose other party access, maybe if you're trying to grant immediate access to your tax preparer. One important thing to note here is that we do have the system designed that you can only grant access to people with either the same amount of access that you have or less powerful. So say that you're an administrator You do not have the ability to grant someone full access to that account. They would need to request it. So then what would happen here is you're going to see after you select that access type is that there are two options that are available for you. One is you can either create a new logon for them, or you can add access to someone that already has a GovConnect Iowa account. This allows you to, like I said, create a GovConnect Iowa profile for someone else, or it allows you to grant access to an existing user like a tax professional. Once this is complete, an email will be sent to the email address that is listed on this screen, and it will have instructions on what to do next. After you enter in this basic profile information, you will need to specify if you want them to have access to all of the accounts or periods, or you can select the yes button, and this will give them access to every account or period that you have access to. So we talked a little bit about what this looks like for business owners and taxpayers, but I also want to talk about what this looks like for tax professionals or third parties. So if you're a tax professional or third party and you already have a GovConnect Iowa account, if you're connected to a customer, you're going to see that you have a link that's called the Accountant Center. And in the Accountant Center, you're going to be able to see this panel that is called My Users, and you're going to see this link that says Manage Secondary Logons. This lets you manage like what we call secondary users, right? Where like think of it like a parent and child relationship. You're the parent logon, you already have access to customers, you've already worked, but say that you hire a staff member. That is a secondary user to you. That's the child account. And what that means is that basically you have the ability to create and manage logons for your staff. So when I'm talking to a tax firm, one of the first things that I say is make sure that you have like a designated other party administrator that works at your firm. And what I mean by that is make sure that you have somebody that's already set up with that initial access. And then what you can do is you can use these secondary logons as a way to individually set up those accounts so that it's managed by one person and you don't have to request access to the same client multiple times. So if the manager of the secondary logon requests and gains access to an account, that secondary logon would also gain access to them too. So there are some different features that are built in to try to save you time from having to request things multiple times. You will note that you do have some neat capabilities using this feature. You have the ability to unlock the secondary users on your own without contacting us. You have the ability to deactivate and reactivate their GovConnect Iowa accounts in real time. So say that you hire someone seasonally, you would be able to deactivate their accounts once they're no longer working for you. And then if you rehire them, you can reactivate their GovConnect Iowa profile. You also have the ability to reset their two-step settings if they say that they're not receiving their codes. And then you can also manage their access levels and the accounts that they have access to. We do have some detailed video tutorials on our YouTube channel if you're interested in a step-by-step walkthrough. So I would recommend checking that out. When you click this Manage Secondary Logons link, I wanted to show you what this screen looks like. So you're going to see that there are 3 tabs, and I would say all 3 of these tabs will be important to you. The first tab that you see is Secondary Logons. This includes a link to add the new GovConnect Iowa accounts or those secondary users. The second one is Customers, and this lets you view which customers are assigned to your clients. And then the third one, sorry, is customer groups. And so this allows you to create specific groups that tie to your customers. So for example, you can add that maybe you want all sales and use accounts in a single group, and then you can assign that group to your secondary users so they can only view and file returns for sales and use accounts. So you do have some different functionality in there if you want to get around and play around. So a question that we get along that line saying, okay, I know that I can do this. What can they do? So the answer is that they can do almost the same as what you can do. The difference is that they don't have the ability to request access to new accounts. That's something that you manage as the secondary logon manager. They also can perform like work on your behalf. They can access customers and accounts that you have access to. You can see on this screen that there are some things to keep in mind, is that say that the secondary user manager happens to leave, they are still managed under that account. So if you lose access to customers, that parent does, so does that child account. So just some things to keep in mind if you're deciding if this is the right path for your organization. So when it comes to adding access here, I just wanted to include on the screen what this looks like. You will see the slide that I showed before. We do put this information right on the screen. So if you're adding new secondary logons, you can see this information. What you would do here is you would input the desired logon information. So what I've seen a lot of people do is they put in like their tax firm name, and then they put like a 1 after it. And I've seen them do that. And then you can input their email address, or if you say that you have like a group email address, you could include that here as well. And then once you input that information, then you're going to get to the step that's called access settings. This is where you can design how you want the customer groups to look and which one you want them assigned to. So what you can do is you can either select, like you can see on the screen here, I have a sales and use one, or you could select that default option, which will grant them exactly the same access that you have. Once you've created their logon, when you return back to that initial screen, you're going to see that it looks a little different. You can see now that there's a table of users. So I did include a snippet of what this looks like for active and inactive users. So say that you have that seasonal employee and they're no longer with your organization, you'll be able to see which users are currently active and which ones are not active. I will note that on the right-hand side, you can see that there is a little search bar that says filter. If you have a lot of employees or these secondary users, you can search for their username, their name, or their account, and you're able to see them and filter them through that bar. So I am going to take a pause here and just see if we have any questions about access. Let me go ahead and pull up this chat, or Patrick and Tara, feel free to speak up if you saw any that may be good
Yeah,
for the group.
Tara has been answering them all through text in the background, and I think that a lot of them were around just getting those logins set up and whether or not you can, let's say you set up a login and then you need to change how that login is constructed, whether a different email address or things. Is that something that's possible?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So after you've created your logon, you do have a lot of I'll call it like self-service capabilities within GovConnect Iowa. So say that you happen to change your email address. Maybe you're the secondary logon manager and you know that you're leaving and you want to transfer it to someone else. What you would do in that case is you would log into your GovConnect Iowa account, and you would go to this link that says manage my profile. That's where you're able to see like the email, the username, all of the basic profile information. You're able to update this and ultimately transfer it if you need to.
Okay.
It's a great question. Tara, not sure if you want to speak up here, but did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I was just going to say, so I did put our YouTube on there. Now, if you do go to tax.iowa.gov, you can find our social media URLs if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. So you can find us at Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, like Jerica had said, and then YouTube as well. So just to make sure you guys stay in the know.
Perfect. Thank you both. I appreciate that. All right, so that's the access portion. Now I want to dedicate some time to talk about third-party authorization. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So the first half, we talked about what online access looks like, but now let's talk about the authorization side. So I really like to go back to basics when we talk about third-party authorization and talk about what it is, who is a third party, what does that look like? So the most important thing to remember is that taxpayers, or if you're a taxpayer here, you can grant third-party authorization to someone to help you with state tax matters. I will say that you have the right to represent yourself. You have the right to authorize someone else to represent you. So just important things to keep in mind. One thing that I will say is that it's important to recognize who a third party is. So a third party can be a family member, a tax professional, an attorney that's representing you. It could be a business owner that's acting on behalf of a business. I've seen that used for third party. It's ultimately any person other than the taxpayer. So we do offer 3 different types of authorization. These can all be granted through Iowa specific forms that are found on our website. I will say that our forms are broken into 4 different sections to help you navigate through the field. So we will walk through those forms today, but this is an expectation as to what you'll be able to learn here. So the first form that we'll talk about is the power of attorney form. This allows someone to represent you in tax matters before the state of Iowa. The second form is the Iowa 8821. This is the disclosure designation form. This allows someone to discuss your tax matters and receive documents, but they are unable to act on your behalf. And the third form is the representative certification form. So this one is extremely important for business owners, employees, trustees, and other specific representatives that act on behalf of a taxpayer or an organization. This form ultimately notifies the department that you have the authority to act. One reminder that I do want to give is to remember that even if you've authorized someone else to help you with your state taxes, you as the taxpayer are still responsible for making sure that your tax obligations are met. So this means filing your returns and making payments on time. So first, we will talk about the Iowa 2848 form. So to better understand the form, I want to talk about what powers they have. So a power of attorney can do several things. They can represent you, advocate for you, and negotiate on your behalf. They can argue facts and they can argue the application of the law. They can receive and discuss your tax information, and they can also receive copies of notices and communication. So a power of attorney, right? It sounds like a big deal, and that's because it is. They can ultimately act on your behalf. So I want to go through each form by section and talk about some of the things that you will see here. If you do have questions, again, go ahead and put those in the chat and Tara will be able to help. And then we'll also have a Q&A portion at the end for that as well. So in section 1 of the Iowa Power of Attorney form, we are asking for taxpayer information. So this is the taxpayer that needs representation, whether it's a business, individual, government agency, a state, or someone else. This is the taxpayer. Why we request this information is that it helps us tie this form back to the correct customer in our system so we can make sure that we're applying it correctly. You will notice that we do have quite a bit of consistency across our third-party forms. So if you hear me repeat myself, that's why. Section 2 is asking for the representative's information. So a common question that we get is, if I'm a tax preparer, do I have to provide my social security number here? The answer is it's kind of up to you. We need at least one ID type here, and you can choose from any of the 4 available options, whether it's your social security number, your PTIN, your CAF, your EIN. You do have different options here, but you have to select one. Another important thing to note on this specific form is that for the ending tax period field, if the end date on the form is left blank, it automatically defaults to 3 years from the start date. And then moving on to section 3, this section is optional, but it does allow taxpayers to name the representative from section 2 to receive refund checks on their behalf. And then section 4, this is the last section regarding signatures. So a common question that we get is, who should be the person signing this form? And the answer is that this form has to be signed by an approved authorized person. So we recommend that for entities other than individual taxpayers that they also include what we call the representative certification form with the Iowa 2848, so it has a higher likelihood of being approved. And then just a reminder that stamped and typed signatures are not accepted. We will talk more about this representative certification form here in just a moment. So some things to remember about the POA form is that if you're submitting a form for a taxpayer that is a business or organization, again, there must be an approved representative certification form for the POA form to be approved. And then second, keep in mind that a failure to submit a completed form could result in the form being rejected and returned to you, and that will ultimately cause delays, right? So my recommendation here would be to review all the fields that are on the form and make sure that all the necessary fields have been completed. So when we talk about the expiration of authorization, I think that this is equally as important to granting it, is you need to know how long those power of attorneys will stay in effect. So those power of attorneys will be there until you either A, submit a new power of attorney form without that named representative, you revoke the authorization, or the representative withdraws it themselves. You as the taxpayer can revoke a power of attorney in two ways. One, you can revoke their authorization on GovConnect Iowa after you're connected to the tax account. Or two, you can authorize a power of attorney form for a new representative for the same tax matters and just exclude the prior power of attorney. A new authorization form will automatically revoke that prior authorization. So that's a brief overview of the 2848, but I want to dive right into the representative certification form, since you did hear that they sometimes can go hand in hand. So first of all, the question that we get is, what is this form? So we call it the rep cert form just for short notice. So if you happen to contact the department and they say rep cert, this is what we're referencing, is this representative certification form. And what this is doing is this notifies the department who is allowed to act on behalf of the taxpayer or the business. So to explain that better, let's talk about who uses this form. So it's used by legal guardians, business owners, business employees, think officers, trustees, government officials, attorneys. There's a long list of people that may be authorized to use this form, but it's ultimately telling us, hey, this person already has the authority to act on this on behalf of this organization. Here's the proof that they can do it. So a common question that we've received is, do I need to certify myself if I work for or if I own a business? The answer to that is yes, you do have to certify yourself. And we do that for a few reasons. The major reason that we have to think about is that we're trying to meet confidentiality standards and requirements. So we do partner with the IRS on multiple fronts, one of those being confidentiality. We do have to follow strict procedures, and we must be able to verify that your information is correct and that you're authorized, and this form allows us to know that information. The second reason is that it helps us keep your information secure. So by sharing who the certified representatives are, it reduces the risk of us inadvertently disclosing that confidential tax information. So the recommendation that I have is, if you're a business owner or you're an employee acting on behalf of an organization, it may be beneficial to complete this form and send it to us before you actually need it. Another common question that we get is, what should I include with this form? I'll go through this here in a little bit, but I would recommend reading through the instructions on the form because it will tell you what documentation is required. A good example of this is that, say that you're an executor of an estate. If you're an executor and you're trying to provide this to us, you are required to either include a copy of the will or a court order that appointed you as the executor. So when we're looking at this rep cert form, we're going to look at section 1. So this starts again with that taxpayer information. You should be seeing a trend on these forms. What we need is that taxpayer information to connect it to the right person in our system. Section 2 is again asking for that representative's information here. The same rules apply. And then section 3, this is where we were talking about that authority. So this is where you get to choose what your relationship is to the business or the organization or the estate that you're trying to represent. So are you a general power of attorney? Are you an executor? Are you a trustee? Are you maybe an officer of the organization? You get to read through all of these options and choose the one that best suits you. You will see after these options is that it does tell you what type of documentation is required. So again, you can see here for an executor, you see that copy of a will. Maybe if you're a parent of a minor, you do have to include a copy of that return that was signed by the parent or the guardian. Read those different requirements, and that will increase the likelihood of that form being approved the first time. I will tell you that, again, if that required documentation isn't there, that form will be returned and it could cause delays for you. And then section 4, again, it has to do with the signature. So the question here is who should sign this form? That's a great question. This form should be signed by the individual that needs certification. So what happens is we're going to review that information and the supporting documentation, and we're going to make sure that it's correct and that it meets our requirements before we approve it. I thought that it would be helpful to include an example here of what we expect for business owners, because I do know that, that has been a point of confusion as well. If I'm the business owner, do I have to do it? So here's an example of ABC Company. So say that John owns a business. He owns ABC Company. A sales and use return was filed and ABC Company owes state tax. Well, John calls the department because he wants to know why he was billed. When we look at our system, we see that we don't have that certified representative or a power of attorney on file. And so we're going to go back and say, shucks, unfortunately, we don't have that. We need to have that authorized individual before we can share the details of the billing. Then what John would do is John would go back, he would get this form, he would complete it, sign it, and send it to us. And then what would happen is we would review and approve that form. And then once that's approved, John would be able to discuss that billing with us. So that's why I talk about being proactive, is that there may be a chance that maybe you have a billing, you have tax due, and if you want to talk to us, this is a required form, so that will help you in the future. So again, with the authorization here, and revoking it is just as important. So it's important to know that the certification stays in place until that authorization is revoked, even if a new form is filed. So to revoke authorization, you would need to send a revocation statement to the department that includes the taxpayer name, identification number, and a statement that the representative's authority has been revoked. And then our final form here is the disclosure designation. So as I mentioned earlier, the disclosure designation form lets you appoint a designated person to receive tax information, and it ultimately allows the department to disclose information to them over the phone. So you'll see here that section 1, again, is asking for this taxpayer or the business information. Step 2 is asking for the representative or the authorized designee information. So we talked about this before, but just remember that for the ID type, it does have to be one of the 4. One thing that we do see on these forms is that sometimes, like say for myself, my name's Jerica. I work for the Iowa Department of Revenue. Sometimes we see that people will put like Jerica Pellington is in the designee name place. And then when we get down to ID type, they're actually entering like FEIN and they're putting the department's FEIN number. So since that isn't mine, this form is going to get denied when we do that check. So it's just important to remember that you have to select from one of the 4 available options. And then section 3 here asks for the account specified. They are authorized to view and explain what happens if the fields are left blank. So just some things to keep in mind. I do have 3 major takeaways that I want you to be aware of here. The first one is the tax period. So that's that first column in that table. What happens in these is that if they're left blank, specific rules might apply based on that field. So for the tax period, for example, if that is left blank, tax periods are extended up to 3 years beyond the signature date. So say that I leave that blank, I sign it June 12th, 2024. That means that it would be automatically extended out to 2027. It's important to note here that in order to modify a form, a new form must be submitted. So that's something else to keep in mind. And then on to section 4, again, this is the signature portion here. It's important to note who's eligible to sign this form. For individuals, sole proprietorship, single member LLC taxpayers, it's the taxpayer who must sign it. And then for any other entity, it's the person with the valid POA or rep cert form that must sign it. So keep in mind that incomplete forms are typically rejected or they'll be returned to you. So it is important to make sure that you can fill in as many of these form or fields on the form as possible. So for the expiration, it's very similar to that certification form. The authorization stays in effect until it's revoked, even if a new disclosure form is filed. To revoke that authorization, again, you'd need to send that revocation statement to us, but it does require a little bit of different information. You have to include the taxpayer name, that identification number, but then you also have to include the name of the designees and then a note to remove either one or all of them. All of these instructions are included with the forms, so you will be able to look through those instructions and find these again. So when we're talking about third party, I just want to share that there are a few things that you need to know. I know that we walked through those forms at a very high level, but here are some other things to keep in mind. First, let's talk about how you authorize a third party. So we talked about what's required in the forms, but we didn't talk about how you should send them to us. So the recommended option is that you submit these through GovConnect Iowa after you're connected to a tax account. The reason why is that this will remove several days of processing for you. But then also, if you submit that form through GovConnect Iowa, we do have a notification system built that you receive a notification if the form is approved or rejected. And then the second option that you have is you're able to go to our website, find these forms, you can complete them, and then you can either send those to us via mail or fax. We thought it would be helpful to include some do's and don'ts of third-party authorization and just make sure that you understand what our expectations are too. So we expect that you would have an authorized individual sign the form, that you would use the most current form on our website, that you would submit the form soon after signing it. Don't hold on to it for a year. We would expect that before you send these to us, that you're reviewing those form details, making sure that there aren't any errors. And then finally is that you ask for help or you look at our website if you have questions on those forms. Some things that we don't recommend is that we recommend that you do not use an outdated form. So make sure if you're pulling these forms that they're directly from our website. The second one is to submit a form signed longer than 6 months ago. I think a lot of people would be surprised how long sometimes these forms are held on for. And sometimes we get them up to like even a year after they signed it. The third one here is to have an unauthorized person sign the form. So like we talked about before, authorization is very important to us. So we recommend that you do not have somebody unauthorized sign it, or you include that rep cert form. The fourth one is don't use the wrong ID type. So we talked about how a tax professional should use the EIN or their social or another number, not the organization's FEIN. And then lastly, don't forget to include that required information. So a couple last things to know here is that we do have a few other things for you to consider, is that our standard processing time is 2 to 3 weeks from the date that we receive the form. That's how long you can expect it to take for us to review and either approve or deny that form. And then like I mentioned earlier, if you're sending that power of attorney or that disclosure form, make sure that you're including a copy of that rep cert form. This will help you avoid having the POA or disclosure form rejected if we don't have a certified representative on file. And then something else for you to remember there as well is that if you're sending us both forms at once, just make sure that that certification form is signed on or before the date that the POA form is signed. So I know I went through a lot of information there. It's a lot, I understand. I tried to keep it as high level and simple as we can. But again, I just wanted to mention the social media that we have here. We do include information and help topics out here. We do have these YouTube tutorials that are available for you. But I wanted to end the session here with, again, this Q&A and see if there are any questions that we can answer live. Tara, I'm sure that you've been busy, but Tara or Patrick, do you see any questions in the chat that might be beneficial for the whole group?
So I know that we're getting some inquiries on why we won't process a POA within that 6-month time frame if that signature date is after 6 months.
That is a great question that I unfortunately do not have the answer to. I am not sure if it's a legislative requirement or if it's business process related. That's something I'm happy to research, and I can get back to Patrick with that information. Unless Tara, do you know the answer to that?
I am not sure on the specifics. I do know another thing too with the dates. I know that's something that they're very particular on. Even with the representative form, if that accompanies the POA and the POA is dated prior to that representative form, we will not process it either.
Okay, so that sounds like we have a takeaway for us, Patrick. I will add that to our list and we'll get an answer back for you.
Gotcha. One other that I'd seen a couple of questions come through, and I think Tara maybe have answered them. Are you able to see inside of GovConnect Iowa who who representatives would be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Tara, would you be able to help us with that one? What are their options in GovConnect Iowa to view that?
Yeah, so on that, if you guys navigate to the I Want To tab and go to the third-party authorization panel, if you click on the revoke third-party authorization, not that you're going to do that, you can currently see every authorization outside of a representative certification form. So a lot of times, if I get a third party who's calling in, maybe they're questioning what years they're authorized for, I will direct them there. It's a way for you to see, hey, is my form updated with the Department of Revenue? And are you calling about a tax year that you're authorized for?
Thank you, Tara. That's very helpful. Are there any other questions that you're seeing? If
I know
not,
you asked,
go ahead, Tara. Sorry.
if we can maybe implement a checkbox to where if a new POA is submitted, maybe to opt out of revoking everybody else. So maybe that's something we can check on.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion here. I'm just going to note that down here.
Yeah, but I do see some other questions that are kind of specific to viewers' own situations or suggestions. Those ones we probably won't be able to address today, but we'll be able to either Tara will see them or I'll follow up and get them to Jerica as well. The recording of this webinar will be available on Iowa SourceLink. It will be sent out to everyone who attended and everyone who registered but didn't attend, so they'll be able to follow up and watch that as well. Jerica mentioned it early on in the slides, but our next webinar is on July 10th. That's going to be on Iowa pass-through entity income tax overviews. Be sure to follow the Department of Revenue and Iowa SourceLink on all the social medias and everything in between. You can go to that link that Haley just posted to register for next month's webinar. With that, I think we'll kind of wrap it up today. Jerica, Tara, thank you so much for both the content and the questions. It was definitely a lot to follow through. And then we can kind of see what people can come up with other questions and go forward with. So, Jerica, any final thoughts on third-party access or authorization?
Not at this time. Again, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who came and participated today. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.